Hello there. Are you someone who wears themselves out regularly? Do you get tired, exhausted, overwhelmed, stressed? Are you sick a lot, seemingly from the external world? Now, I'm here to challenge you. If you are someone who relates to this idea of self sacrifice. Now, I've talked about the drama cycle before, and there is a role out of the three roles in the triangle called the rescuer. Another name would be the hero or the martyr. Now, this role is something that is learned behavior. It's a role that we take into adulthood. Now, often the person who has this default role where they feel that they have to rescue others had a parent or a primary caregiver who did not act as a responsible parent, who became a victim and put the burden or responsibility on the child's shoulders to take over as the role of parent. Now, this obviously is unhealthy. The hero, rescuer, martyr is a program that has most likely been running your entire life since you're a child. Running, driving your behaviors, your thoughts, your words, your deeds from the shadows. Now, I've spoken about how these programs are installed. Usually by the age of 7, these are crystallized into our behavior. They are our modus operandi. We have a default role in the drama cycle: victim, rescuer, or bully, persecutor. But we often have this role we play in order to survive within our childhood home. The problem is we bring this role into our adult life and we continue to be run by this program. Typical traits of someone who rescues or is a martyr or a hero: they provide support to others. However, often this support is heavily unsolicited. The helicopter style parent, if you think about that kind of role, where the support that is given disables that person receiving that support to become personally empowered themselves. This person, the rescuer, often has an inferiority complex, which is covered by a feeling of superiority when they are rescuing and helping others. Their entire modus operandi is guilt. Guilt programming drives their constant cycles of needing to find a victim to rescue. And obviously, if they can't find a victim, they live in a state of anxiety or fear that something bad is going to happen. The rescuer often feels connected when a victim is dependent on them. So you can see why it's vital that they have someone that they can rescue in their lives at any one time. Those gaps between rescuing others is very scary for them because they feel completely separate from others. The way they were made to feel when they were just a little child and their parent took the responsibility of being a parent and gave it to them instead. They felt separate, alone, rejected as a child, ashamed for being a child, and made to feel guilty when they did act like an actual child instead of a parent. The rescuer expects to fail. And this is the saddest part. It doesn't matter how much you go out and find someone to help through the programming of guilt, you just expect it to not work out anyway. So you are in forever a state of anxiety or fear. So all these rescuing efforts are an attempt ultimately to distract you from doing your own shadow work, which means looking at your own shadows, looking at your blind spots and fears. The rescuer is chronically distracting themselves from looking at this in their own life. Now, what are they most afraid of looking at? And there's a very good reason why they don't want to look at it, but that's their core wound or trauma. They don't want to look at it again. It was so painful when they were kids, being made to become the grown-up adult for one of their parents or both. And so the pain that this caused was rejection and loneliness, separation, guilt, shame, a very low self-esteem and self-value, because they were not valued for who they were as a child. They were made to be someone else. So of course, the rescuer is avoiding at all costs looking at their own shadows, this guilt, shame, rejection, loneliness. Now, if you're looking to identify the traits in someone of a typical rescuer, this is going to show up in people who, as I mentioned, are constantly sick, constantly exhausted, constantly worn out, constantly overwhelmed. The martyr has no attunement to their internal guidance system, never got a chance to come online. They've cut themselves off from their body, from their physical body, when they were first traumatized, when they were just little kids. They decided that it was far too painful to ever feel that pain again, that their parents rejected them as a child. So that they cut themselves off from their body, from physically feeling. And of course, the trauma, which is an energy, gets stuck in the body. So they can never access this trauma. The nervous system of the rescuer is not working for them in alignment. They're totally out of balance. The sympathetic nervous system working overtime. The norm is fight, flight, freeze. They're often numb to their body. This is how we develop a coping mechanism. We don't want to feel that ever again, so we cut ourselves off. In addition, all of this is lowering our immune system. And subconsciously, it's a two-edged sword. The rescuer is creating sickness in their body and disease in order to actually try and feel something, because they know subconsciously they can't connect to their body. They often cannot meet their basic needs because of all of these factors. They can't tell when they're hungry, when they're tired, when they're sleepy, when they need water or hydration. They're basic needs they overlook and neglect in themselves. They can't express their emotions, let alone identify their feelings in a healthy and conscious way. They're completely blocked to care and nurture for themselves. Now, all of this takes place when they're going out of their way to be distracted by other people's drama as the rescuer role. Their guilt driving them to find someone to help. Now, rescuers are absolutely attracted to drama as a means to escape their own shadows. They might not realize it, but if they take a good hard look at their lives, they'll see that there's a lot of drama and victims that follow them around in their lives, no matter where they go. Even if they move across the other side of the world, they'll often find drama and chaos will follow them wherever they go. Now, that can manifest either externally in events and circumstances and situations, or internally in physical dis-ease. Often these people will attempt to run away or retreat in cycles. So there's no consistency in a rescuer's life because they cannot assert their own boundaries. They don't have an internal guidance system to recognize where they end and someone else starts. So there's no attunement to their own needs to be able to say no. They have no idea when to say no, and they are not aware that they need to fill their own cup before helping others. It doesn't even come into their idea of priority at all. And so they go to seek rescue in others to help others, and they, meanwhile, are completely empty of their own inner resources. Now, as you can see, all of this creates an endless cycle of pain and suffering for the poor rescuer. This endless cycle further fuels the excuse to be overly involved in other people's lives, in helping others. It's a complete distraction from their own pain and suffering. Of course, again, they become completely worn out and then retreat. So you can often tell if you look objectively at someone's life who you suspect is a rescuer or has this programming, this core trauma, you'll see this in cycles. They'll go out and help, and then retreat because they're exhausted, either in sickness or disease or just completely low immune system. No emotional capacity to help anyone. It's one extreme to the other. This is a painful way to live. This is completely unconscious behavior. The root of the problem, which is the core trauma, their shadow, is that unmet child need. And so this never gets resolved or completed, the unmet child need to feel loved as a child, not as a parent. And so this constantly drives their behavior round and round. The answer to this cycle of pain and suffering for the rescuer, if you resonate or recognize yourself in this role that I've talked about today, this is for you. Just listen here. The answer lies in first illuminating these patterns in your own life. I want you to get a journal. Start noticing your unconscious behavior, your unconscious cycles of sickness and exhaustion and helping others and distraction from your own pain. Okay, start to write down these patterns. Notice them. Does any of this ring true for you? Ask yourself. So when you shine a light on these shadows in your life, they cannot function the same way anymore. Their power lies in you not seeing them. So this is why we illuminate them in your life. You become the conscious observer of these shadows, and they cannot be shadows anymore. Now, once someone begins to see that they've been playing this rescuer, hero, martyr role in their lives, they must stop and step out of the cycle in order to face their own shadow or fear. And that is the core wound of rejection, loneliness, guilt, and shame. This takes courage to feel. We need to feel to heal. We've got to be able to complete the process of feeling the emotions that that child first felt when they realized that they weren't allowed to be a child, that they couldn't be who they naturally wanted to be. They had to grow up quickly and become someone else in order to survive. That it became a shame to have childhood experiences and emotions, the full range of emotions that a child has every right to feel and complete and release as a child, with pure loving acceptance and non-judgment in the process. They never got that. So you need to be able to do this for yourself now, no matter how old you are. If you want to delete this program of rescuing, you've got to be brave and look at your own shadows and allow yourself to finally feel and release in loving acceptance all of the pain that that child never got to express. Loving what arises is the key, it's the answer in this process. So it's also important that you need to accept that you're not just a physical body, you have an emotional body. When you cut yourself off from ever feeling that pain again, you cut off the emotional body that is a very real part of you. You need to bring that back, that awareness back, and nurture your emotional body. This means accepting and embracing you have emotions, and they're not to be shied away from. They're not to be embarrassed or ashamed about. When someone communicates honestly and authentically their emotions from their heart, how they're feeling, and that brings up embarrassment or shame in you, you can be sure you have a program running there where you were made to feel embarrassed and ashamed when you were a child for feeling things. That's not helping you anymore. That's blocking you off from healing, wholeness, and integration. So recognize that in yourself. Fully love and accept yourself. If it's troublesome for you, imagine you're a child again. You cannot judge or condemn a child for feeling. So if you're having trouble not judging yourself or feeling embarrassed and shameful for feeling things, make yourself become the child. See things through the child's eyes, and you won't have that same perception of judgment. You'll see why it's been so hard for you to heal, because you've been blocking it with that parent self that told you it was not okay. We need to learn to attune to our own needs, especially if you're a rescuer. Everyone needs to learn to attune to their needs and put online their internal guidance system, which many of us have never, ever actually learned how to use. We didn't even know it's in there. This is part of the healing and integration and wholeness work we do. So, how do we begin to meet our own needs? Well, first, we need to recognize that by going out and distracting ourselves to meet others' needs, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice if we haven't met our own first. So, we can't go out and save others if we're exhausted or sick or tired or emotionally blocked off from ourselves. You're not helping yourself or anyone else. You're doing them a disservice. They must see that doing anything out of guilt is dishonoring yourself. You need to recognize that too. So helping others because you feel guilty is not a good thing. You would be honoring that person by helping yourself first. So how do we nurture ourselves? Well, we need to make space for this very kind of work. It needs to be of value, it needs to be important to you that you start to heal your emotional and mental bodies. You will then find your physical body, which is probably in a lot of turmoil and disharmony, will naturally start to return to harmony and wholeness again. It's mind before matter. You've got to work on that mind before you can work on the physical manifestation of the mind, which is the body. So make space for yourself. Make it important. Make a decision that you're going to make it important to heal your inner world, the shadows. You're going to look at those shadows bravely and with courage. It might mean cocooning for you for a while, just cutting yourself off a little bit by saying no to all of the external demands that you've allowed to creep into your world and stomp all over you because you didn't have self-care to say no. It's about learning to recognize when you have low external energy instead of pushing yourself to the absolute limits. You are useless to yourself and others when you do that. It's about honoring yourself, creating inner sanctuary because you love yourself enough to recognize that you are valued. And you can only be of true value to others when you see the value in yourself first. So one thing I would recommend is learning boundaries work. Go research boundaries. I've got a video about boundaries too. Learn how to say no. Recognize your own needs. Start to listen to your body when it's thirsty, tired, hungry, when it needs to feel something. If you feel something coming up, if your throat starts to constrict, that's a sign your body's telling you that it wants to feel something. Allow it to. As soon as you can appropriately, allow it to. And do it with loving acceptance and validation through the child's eyes. And you will get healing. And you will return to wholeness. And you will no longer be run by the shadow program of rejection, loneliness, guilt, shame. And therefore, you will no longer seek constant distraction in your life by rescuing others. There will be balance. People will recognize that you love yourself enough to truly know that they feel that love from you and not out of guilt. So you will be honoring everyone around you when you honor yourself first. And wouldn't it be nice to have balance in your life where it's not just one constant roller coaster after the next? You no longer have to run away from yourself or feel embarrassment or shame about feeling. I promise you, this is all worth the effort. And I'll encourage you to start to approach this in your life today if you resonate with any of this pain or suffering in your own life. So I do hope that this has been enlightening for you, encouraging. Please like, subscribe, and share if you do feel that you achieved some sort of insight here. And have a beautiful day.